Hello everyone, and welcome to the third innings. My name is Maxwell Charlesoff, and alongside me is my co-host and good friend Prasuk Jain. So, Prasuk, I heard that in Chennai, 22 people decided to get together in a field and hit a ball around for 4 days. Can you tell us a bit about what happened?
Well, we're in the midst of witnessing comebacks from the Indian Test team, and we saw another one here after what happened in the first Test. For a change, Kohli won the toss and got to bat first, albeit one that wouldn't have mattered. The ball was spitting here from the first session and dropping on the bat from the seventh over itself. There was a puff of dust every ball since. India still compiled a mammoth 329 on the back of a big 100 by Rohit. He scored a good 161, showing the way. Moeen was the pick of the bowlers for England with 4 for 128. After the first innings, England still felt they were in the game, but until they bundled out 434 in their first innings, with Ashwin doing most of the damage with 5 for 43 and getting India a match-winning lead of 195. England would have hoped to have India in a similar position with the pitch doing its tricks, but India compiled another 286 with the help of a brilliant ton by Ashwin and a batting masterclass from Kohli. Again, 8 wickets were taken by the spinners, with Moeen and Leach picking 4 each. It looked like the game would well finish on the third day itself, but England managed to push it to the fourth day before getting all out for 164, with Akshar getting a 5-for on debut. What a game he had. This effort has put the series at 1-1, and there's everything to play for in the third Test. It's going to be exciting, Maxi.
Yeah, plenty of positives there for India and that brilliant display. But, with such results, questions are always going to come up. In this case, do you think that Ashwin is India's best all-rounder?
Well, it really depends on where they are playing. I'd say Ashwin is a better spinner than Jadeja, considering Jadeja is considered to be one of the best all-rounders India has ever had. Ashwin is a better spinner. We could see that from the way he set up Lawrence just before the lunch break. That's the experience that he possesses. That's the kind of multi-dimensional performance that he can show. But in terms of overseas performance, if India is playing overseas, I think Jadeja is better because he has that accuracy and he has that control over his bowling, because in overseas conditions, it's more important to hold up one end instead of taking wickets while the seamers do the job. So it's more better suited for Jadeja to have that control, to have that accuracy. And again, Jadeja is a very multi-dimensional player with his batting and fielding ability that he brings on the table as compared to someone like an Ashwin. But with Jadeja injured right now, Ashwin has really stepped up with his batting and is proving to be a wonderful number 7 for India if he can bat above someone like an Akshar Patel.
So yeah, you mentioned Jadeja there, and obviously with his injury, India has been going through like-for-like replacements. We have Washington Sundar, featured heavily in the Australian series. The latest one, of course, being Akshar Patel, who took 7 for 100 on debut. But brilliant effort, maiden 5 in the fourth innings. Could you tell us a bit more about who he is? Because people outside of India might not know.
Well, he is from Gujarat, where we're heading for the next Test match. He's someone who never wanted to be a cricketer. He was going to be a mechanical engineer, and he never played cricket. While in school, his talent was spotted by one of his friends, and then he started batting. So he started his career as a batsman. But given the kind of Indian team we had at that time in 2012, he thought being a bowler will help his chances to enter the Indian team. Then he started bowling. He debuted for Gujarat in 2012 in the Ranji Trophy, but could only play 1 game in the whole season. Next year, he was picked up by Kings 11 in the IPL, but he was sitting on the bench the whole season. Didn't think he would start his career like that. But things turned around after that in the 13 to 14 season in the Ranji Trophy, when he would have dreamed for that. He had an all-round performance with the bat and the ball. He had an average of around 46, batting average of around 46, and a bowling average of around 23, 24, if I'm not wrong, sorry. Just after that, he was picked up in the IPL. He took 17 wickets there, and that led to an India call-up. And he has never looked back from that. He has been consistent in the white ball for India, and that more relies on the fact that he played a lot of list A games for India, not those many first-class games. Having said that, he still got a test call-up recently with a short but a good first-class career behind his name, and with the kind of performance he has made, he has in the first test, I think the future is very bright for him. And recently he was also selected for the T20 team against England, and he selected after 3 years, so I'm pretty sure he's very excited about it.
And obviously, as captain of the Gujarati Cricket Association in the Ranji Trophy, he's going to really know what tricks to play in that third test coming up.
Exactly.
So I've seen a couple of pundits floating around suggesting that the pitch did all the work, really, for Patel. And in that same respect, Moeen, Leach and Ashwin and Kuldeep Yadav as well. What do you make of that? How bad do you think this pitch was, really, if bad at all?
I think you would call a pitch bad when there's not an even contest between bat and ball. I don't think that was the case, given the fact that India managed to score 600 runs in 2 innings here. Some of the Indian batsmen showed how to score here. Rohit Sharma had a century, Ashwin had a century, Virat Kohli, the way he changed his game mid-game. It showed that you can score runs if you apply yourself. So I wouldn't really call this a bad pitch. It's the same when a team like India goes overseas and plays on a pitch that is greener than the grass. That's something we saw at Lord's. And India still managed to win that game. So I wouldn't call that a bad pitch. Would you call it a bad pitch if it's a road, if it's a flat track? Because it's still not an even contest between bat and ball. It's not. There's nothing for the bowlers, and that is not considered to be a bad pitch. So I don't think I would call it a bad pitch. There's nothing wrong or bad with that. That's the home advantage that we have, and every country has that.
Well, just to answer your question there about whether I would call a road or a flat pitch a bad pitch, we see in Australia a lot of frustration around the MCG and flat pitches. We label them poor ourselves, even if the ICC doesn't. So no one enjoys seeing a team rack up 550 for 6 declared versus 450 versus 600, that kind of game. It doesn't make for very compelling test cricket. So for me, a good pitch is a pitch that provides an entertaining game of cricket. And what we can truly say about the second test is it was an entertaining game of cricket. And I don't think it was the pitch that let the English team down. It was their own batting that let the team down. I don't think they bowled terribly. Restricting India for under 350 in the home conditions, that's a brilliant effort. They just didn't back that up with the bat. I heard something interesting by Adam Collins on The Final Word, who put it in a way, he phrased it in a way, said, a green seamer, like at Lords, or as we see in New Zealand very often, they flatten out and become better to bat on over time. So while the balance between bat and ball at the start of the game may not be perfect, heavily weighted towards bowlers, it gets better for batsmen as the game progresses. And what people get frustrated by when it comes to subcontinental pitches, not just in India, but in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh and Pakistan as well, is that it starts heavily weighted towards the bowler sometimes, and then gets progressively more weighted towards the bowler. So batsmen don't really get a chance to get their foot in the door of the game. But I don't think this happened here. I think we can see that by the fact that India managed to almost score another 300 in the second innings and Ashwin managed to ton up, I think that shows that really it wasn't the pitcher's fault. It was not England's inability to play spin, because I think that they can play spin well, and they showed that in Sri Lanka. It's their inability to play that much spin. When a ball is spinning 30 centimeters, they can play that. But when a ball is spinning 60 centimeters over the course of 5 days, they're not going to play that very well. And I can't think of a team that's not from Asia that can play that very well. So I don't think it's necessarily even an English problem. I think it's a Sina problem, and we saw that as well. England can bat in these conditions. Folks showed that you can bat in those positions with his 44 not out in the second innings. It is possible. They just needed people to step up. 42 not out in the second innings. And I think it really drives that point home. They need batsmen to step up, and they'll be really hoping that with the probable inclusion of Johnny Bairstow in the next test, they can really shore up that top order and get them off to good starts.
Yeah, absolutely. And if England put up a better show, the test would have gone into the 5th day, and a bad pitch wouldn't allow that.
Exactly.
You mentioned Foakes. What a find for England. Do you think Foakes should be England's full-time keeper?
Well, what I really like about Foakes is that unlike a lot of batsmen and keepers and just general players in the international arena, he has been taking opportunities when given them. He hasn't needed to be given a 15-test streak to show what he's made of. He's only played 6 tests. In that, he has, I think, a couple 50s and 100. And he has a batting average of just under 42, 41.7. You compare that to Bairstow's average of 35 and Butler's average just a tad lower at 34.5. He shows that he's a cut above the rest. And I know it's a small sample size, but he hasn't played a test at home. He's only played in the subcontinent. And if his batting average is touching 42 in the subcontinent, then at home, I think he's going to do much better. Exactly. I think he has now he's going to bat another 4 times. I don't think England's going to be declaring anytime soon in this test, in these next 2 tests. He has another 4 chances, and I think he needs 175 plus score to cement that spot that's his. And now Butler and Bairstow will have to fight him for it rather than him having to fight them for it. Because I don't think he's done a foot wrong since he's been in this side. He just gets muscled out by these big name players who are still playing on the potential that they have 35, 40 tests into their test career. But speaking of opportunities, do you think that Kuldeep Yadav was given enough of an opportunity to show what kind of a player he can be in this test?
Sadly, I don't think so. I think India missed a trick there. I think that was the only negative I would say that India had in their performance. It was the perfect opportunity for India and Kohli to try Kuldeep, let him bowl for 40 and 50 overs, make him pick wickets, because on this track, if you bowl 40, 50 overs being a wrist spinner, I don't think you can't take wickets. The fact that he just bowled 6 overs in the first innings tells you that he didn't get enough opportunity. Would you blame Kohli or not having the damage done from the other end? But it's an opportunity definitely missed. I think he needed that confidence going into the last 2 tests. If he had that confidence, he could have been a different bowler. Also in the T20s, again, it's about the role, because his role being a wrist spinner is about taking wickets. So he needs those wickets under his belt. And talking about roles, again, that is something you can see, you can compare within the 2 teams. You could see from comparing the first and the second innings, Leach and Moeen, they really improved because they understood how to bowl on this pitch. They started bowling faster, they started bowling fuller, making the batsman drive. And I think we can definitely say that Moeen also made sure his IPL auction price was raised at least 4 times with that cameo at the end. There'll be a lot of talks about that for sure. He left at a good note. What do you say about Moeen?
Well, I'm under the impression that Moeen has his mojo back. He showed a lot of promise early in his career. He shows a lot of promise against not really top 5 sides, against the West Indies, against Bangladesh, against Ireland, teams like that. But I think what we saw in this test was a Moeen Ali, especially in the second innings of England's second innings, was a Moeen Ali playing without fear, and mostly without fear of being dropped, because he already had his planned rest at the end of the test. And I don't think he plays without that fear enough. It obviously doesn't help when the selectors are batting him at 3 and then batting him at 6 and then batting him at 8. He needed some stability. But I think really just to dismiss Virat Kohli twice in a test in Indian conditions, plus take a further 6 wickets for the game, that's not an easy feat. I don't think that happens by fluke in India. Definitely not against Virat Kohli. And the cherry on top is his 43 off 18 at the end. I think that really he can leave this series knowing that he put as much in it as he could, given the opportunities he was given. I don't think he did much wrong. Yes, he bowled a couple too many full tosses at times, but that's going to happen. He also hasn't played that much red ball cricket for a long time. It was just a really feel-good moment. I think that's my feel-good moment for the week. is just seeing Moeen Ali back at his best, no matter how good that best is. There's a lot of people have different opinions on how good that best is, but seeing him at his best, that just brought warmth to my heart. Do you have a feel good moment for the test that went by?
I do, as a matter of fact. There was one moment where it just kept made me smiling and smiling. The moment when Ashwin reached his century, he was celebrating, he was jumping around, he knew this is the best century he has ever had. But having seen the reaction from Mohammad Siraj, that was something very special. That tells you how close the Indian team is at the moment, how good they feel about each other. Yes, there is a competition between spinners, seamers, batsmen, but it's a very good, healthy competition. And you can see that everyone is happy for each other's success. And that was a very, very good feel moment for me.
I think that the Australian series that just went by really galvanised that team. I think before there was a rift between maybe the top players in the side and then the youngsters or the new guys in the team not really becoming part of one team. But I think with that Australian series, we now see like a more unified Indian side. So where these fringe players like Mohammad Siraj, who hasn't played that many tests, feeling that way for a guy who hasn't played much cricket with him, I think that just shows how interconnected this Indian team is.
Well, we spoke about the feeling good moments. There were some instances when we also were disappointed or fired up in cricket terms. Was there any moment like that for you?
Well, I don't want people to think I'm a Virat Kohli hater. I admire Virat Kohli. He's a brilliant batsman. But I do think that there can be some questions about how he plays the game. And, as an Australian, I know a lot of Australians have an opinion that the way he plays cricket, we don't like it that much, the way he carries himself. But we feel like if he was in the Australian side, we wouldn't see anything wrong with it, But I think it's just highlighted by that point where there's two instances in this test. The one where he was bowled by Moeen Ali and he stood around checking with his partner, kind of what happened, kind of in a little bit of disbelief that he was gone for a duck, But obviously, there's the argument that he was having a chat to see whether the keeper removed the bails or not, but that's more of a spirit of cricket thing, just accept the opposition. But then it mostly boils down to, on the third day, closing in on stumps, the Indian team goes up for an LBW appeal. They check with DRS. DRS shows that the impact is outside the line. This is a rule in cricket. It can be the most ridiculous rule in cricket, which, in my opinion, it's one of those. I think a lot of the LBW rules are pretty ridiculous in cricket. But the impact being outside the line of off stump, it's in the rule book. So they didn't get a successful appeal on that. So Virat Kohli decides, well, maybe if I go and have a chat with the umpire, something might change. That might not be what he was thinking. Probably not what he was thinking, but that's what it looked like he was thinking. The umpire's not going to change the rules for you there. If it's in the rule book, that's how you're playing this test. You can have a chat with the match referee after the game and say, hey, hold on, we really need to change this rule. It's ridiculous. But that's just how cricket works. If it's in the rules, arguing with the umpire is not going to change that. It's not going to do anything. All it's going to make you look like is a bit of a tosser. And I think that's what it did. So that was my fired up moment at the moment of the game. It didn't make me so angry, but it made me like, what? Yeah, why? What are you doing, mate? Just accept it and move on. I think that's really contrasted to the captaincy of Root. And I think maybe you can speak a bit on that.
Yeah, absolutely. If you compare it with someone like a Root, he could have had his chances as well. We saw that with the dismissal of Rahane in the first innings. Rahane clearly gloved it. Everyone saw that. Although it was an appeal for an LBW, but that's the job of the third umpire to check the complete frame of the ball where before it has been it's touched the ground, right? So it's the whole motion of the ball. In that moment, Root could have gone to the umpire and said, can you please check the whole frame? Because it's still in the rules. But that guy was just smiling. And that tells you about the spirit of the game. And that's how I see Test cricket as. That's Test cricket for me, having that spirit of the game. And that is something very different from someone like a Kohli or someone like a Payne as well. And it's just something that can be avoided.
It's one of those intangible things in cricket that makes you both love the game and oftentimes just hate the game. It's something that you don't find in other sports where, okay, we're going by the rules, but you also have to go by these separate rules that aren't written down anywhere. There's changes from country to country. This thing called spirit of cricket. What is it? It's some people play where like, well, I play by the rules, I don't play by the spirit. But if you play like that, people in cricket generally aren't going to like you. You know, it's just one of these weird things. It makes me love the game, but it also makes me sometimes want to pull my hair out, you know. Exactly. But Suki, you know me, and anyone who knows me knows that even as a leg spinner, I have the inability to bowl a wrong in. It might be because my biceps are too big or something. I have no idea. It pains me so much. So therefore, I'm going to verbally pitch one in the rough to you. See if it turns the other way. And you got to try and protect that front pad of yours, okay?
Hopefully.
So, besides India, who I think, and judging by statistics, are probably going to make it to the World Test Championship. So, besides India, who deserves to be in that World Test Championship final with New Zealand more? Is it England or is it Australia?
That's a tough one. I'll have to go with England. That's because of one simple fact that in Test cricket especially, I think you need to judge the performance by how teams are doing at home and overseas. And judging by the recent past, England has performed very well overseas as compared to Australia. Australia only won their games at home.
Well, like England have won 6 of their last 7 games overseas. That one loss being the previous test. Yeah. So with this World Test Championship cycle, I believe the only overseas test tour Australia's had was the trip to the Ashes in 2019, which, much to their credit, they managed to draw 2-2, albeit against a still reforming English side with new openers at the top and stuff like that.
But losing at home against India was the final nail in the coffin. I think if Australia won that series, then they would have qualified for the World Test Championship final for sure. But losing that series, especially to an Indian team which was not even selected for the first round, that happened only because the first sort of set of the players were injured and then they had to play with the second set. Still, they managed to lose. And their counterparts, I think England, because they won in Sri Lanka on a spinning track. Both the games were perfect spinning tracks, probably the similar track as we are seeing in India right now. And displaying the best performances there with the ball, with the bat, I think they very much deserve to go into the finals alongside New Zealand. Since I'm a seamer, I won't try and bowl a wrong one to you, but I'll bowl a bouncer to you. Ready to duck. Do you think it would have helped England if they played 3 spinners instead of 2? Do you think they missed a trick there, especially with Root and even Lawrence getting as much chase as their frontline spinners?
No, I don't think it would have helped England. I don't think it was their bowling that let them down this game. I really do think it was their batting. They restricted, as I said before, they restricted India to under 350 twice in the home conditions. That's amazing feat. As an Australian, I'm used to when Australia goes and tours India, England rack up 600. You know, that's just kind of how it happens, and we accept it. And we're like, okay, well, game's over. Kind of, let's just pack up and go home. But my main question would be, who would be that third spinner? So they would then play Bess, Leach, and Ali in the same game, and they drop either Broad or Stone. They needed that controller Broad in the side who was able to swing it at any point in the game, more often than not. Stone picked up wickets, key wickets as well, not just cleaning up the tail. And I just don't see how a third spinner in that side would have caused any other difference than restricting India to under 350 in that first innings. I think they did as much as they could with the resources they have, especially with this rotational policy that they have going on. If they played Bess in this test, they probably would have rested him in the next test. But then they'd be left with just Leach. You know, they needed to rest someone, and it's in my opinion that they rested Bess at this point because Moeen Ali was still on tour. So they had the opportunity to rest Bess without having to dig into the spin archives, you know. So I don't think that having 3 spinners would have helped them any more than having 2 spinners did. I think Moeen Ali also performed really well. I don't think Best would have performed any much better. I guess we'll see if he will next test.
Absolutely. I think also the fact that India didn't really use their third spinner that much.
Exactly.
So they might as well have had another batsman there. But we'll see it in the next test.
Alrighty, so that's all we have time for today. Make sure to catch us again tomorrow for our third test preview, which should really decide the rest of the series. I don't see England coming back from a 2-1 deficit with 1 test to go, but I also don't really see India coming back from a 2-1 deficit. Those are some fighting words considering India's recent test form, but I think 2-1 down, I think they might crumble in the 4th test. But that being said, I think India is going to take this 3rd test, so that's it's a pointless conversation. It's been a pleasure having your company. Please make sure you leave us a rating and a review. It would really help us out. Follow the socials in the description to stay updated, and we will see you guys soon.
Thank you. Thank you.